My name is Stephen Barden, and I am a supervising sound editor, and I have been doing that for about 15 years now. I work closely with film directors, television producers on coming up with their final overall soundtracks for their films or television series. So when I say soundtracks, I'm talking about dialogue, sound effects, and music. In film production, television production, on set, when the film is being shot or when the TV series is being shot, all we really care about capturing from a sound point of view is dialogue, the words that the actors speak. Everything else, virtually everything else at that point, is done in post-production. All of the sound effects are added in post-production, music is added in post-production. So my job as a supervising sound editor is to oversee the combination of all three of those elements, dialogue, sound effects, and music, in putting together the entire soundtrack. Well, most recently I've been working on a TV series for the last couple of years that's called Departures, which is, I think, what you would refer to as a lifestyle TV show. So it's not a drama, it's not a scripted drama. But it's about two youngish friends. They're about in their mid-20s, and they travel all over the world, and they see different aspects of the world, places that most people wouldn't necessarily go to visit when they're traveling. So it's really it's a good panorama of the entire world. And the great thing about that is that the locations are always really challenging. They go to very far-reaching places of the planet. And as a result, sometimes the sound isn't always the greatest where they are, where they're recording. Sometimes they'll be out in the middle of Antarctica and the wind is really howling and therefore the sound isn't all that good, or they'll be in the middle of a jungle and there's all kinds of insects and that type of thing. So those types of challenges are really interesting, but again, every single week it's a little bit different. So that's really exciting to have to deal with. The hours that I keep in my job are pretty wide-ranging. I would say that a typical week is never any less than 40 or 50 hours a week. And when things are really busy, or when there's a schedule crunch for whatever reason, sometimes our schedules get compressed, it can easily be 50 to 60-hour weeks with no problem at all. So you're looking at five days, 12-hour days, or sometimes a regular working day, but we'll also work on a weekend or that type of thing. So they can be a little bit all over the place, but they do tend to be pretty long hours. Before becoming a supervising sound editor, I attended a film school for 3 years, graduated with a diploma from it was actually a media arts program with a specialty in sound. So in my last 2 years of that program, I specialized in courses that were particularly about sound. In the film industry, you very rarely walk into a paying job the day after you graduate from school. So I certainly worked, probably the first 3 or 4 months of my career were what we loosely call internships or apprenticing, which is really just a polite way of describing a slave in the film industry, where you're working pretty long hours, you're not getting any money. If you're lucky, they're buying your meals for you, that type of thing. But the company that I was working for at that time is the company that I ended up working for and have been working for since then. So it was 3 or 4 months of my life that I gave up that paid off dividends greatly. My job since I started has become more and more computer dependent. It was very computer dependent to begin with, but at least within the sound world, when I first started working, we were still dealing with recording on tape. We were still recording onto analog tape as well as digital tape. And in the last 15 years, tape has pretty much disappeared and been replaced by hard disks and flash memory that type of thing. We have to assume that audiences are going to become more and more sophisticated and expect a higher level or higher caliber of work in all of the productions that they pay money to listen to. If that's a film that they go to see in a movie theater, or if it's a TV show that they are paying for to watch at home on cable, we are generally assuming that our audiences are always going to be expecting sound to be better and better and better. So we have to keep on raising the bar for ourselves in terms of the quality of those tracks. Well, there's no question that in the world of post-production sound, working as a supervising sound editor, I am working with the latest and greatest and cutting-edge media technology. We are expected to be able to do more and more and more in less time and on a lower budget than ever before. So we have to assume, or we have to expect, that our computers are going to be faster, are going to be capable of doing more for us in a smaller amount of time, and we have to be able to keep up with that technology. When I first started working in the industry, my friends pretty much assumed that I would be working every day and every night, and the days off were rare days off, so I took great advantage of them whenever I possibly could. Since then, since establishing myself in the industry, I have been able to give a little bit more time back to my personal life, back to my family, but still there are times where I will be working out of the country. For example, I'll be working in Los Angeles or working in New York for 2 or 3, sometimes up to 6 months at a time, where I'm only getting to see my family, you know, every few weekends or something like that. So that's a little bit tough, but unfortunately it's just part of the job. It doesn't have to be that way, but the nature of the projects that I work on sometimes take me to cities other than that in which I live. So the type of person who would gravitate towards post-production sound is going to be someone who exhibits, I think, a really good balance between strengths of the left brain and strengths of the right brain. So someone who has a great deal of creativity, but also an intrinsic nature of attention to detail. So there are a lot of times where we'll be faced with a scene that has no sound, that we have to create sound from the ground up, where you are literally like a painter looking at a blank canvas and you're trying to decide what color of paint you're going to start painting with first. And then there's those times where it's literally like that, where you're creating a world from the ground up. So from a purely creative point of view, that's very exciting and it's a lot of fun. But then at the same time, we have to make sure that every single facet of that world is covered with a particular type of sound. One of the things that I think I would try to realize, or that I would try to make myself aware of, is what the world sounds like. And that's a tough question sometimes to answer. For example, and here's a really great practical example. When I was in high school and even into college, I didn't know how to drive a standard transmission car. I had always driven an automatic car. I'd never been taught, nor had I ever taken the time to learn how to drive a stick shift. And one of the things that as a result, that I never really paid attention to is what a standard transmission car sounds like when an engine gets close to that point where you have to change gears, and what the engine sounds like when you press the clutch in, and what the engine sounds like when you change gears, and how the engine sounds when you go into a new gear, and that type of thing. And as a result, when it came time for me to start cutting sound effects, to start editing sound effects for cars traveling, someone driving a car, I realized that I wasn't really equipped to edit the sound for that particular action on screen, because I just had never really been paying attention to it. In my job as a sound editor, I find myself wishing that I had paid more attention to learning how to tell stories. I think in high school I was very much a math and science and even music. I played a lot of music in high school. And I really dismissed courses like English or creative writing. I mean, I took those courses, but I took them because I had to, and I got the marks in them that I had to get in order to advance, from year to year. But I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to what I was being taught in terms of storytelling. And at the end of the day, as part of a filmmaking team, really all we are doing is telling stories. Coming out of high school today, I think that students are ill-equipped to make life decisions about what they want to do with with the rest of their lives. And that is not a slight against the education system in any way whatsoever. I know lots of students who have graduated out of high school who are very bright, who are very promising, who are socially adept, and all of that good stuff. But the fact of the matter is that when you're graduating out of high school, generally speaking, you're 17 or 18 years old. And I don't think that you have seen enough of the world at that point, that you've met enough people, that you've had enough experiences to really make a decision as to what you think it is that you want to do with the rest of your life. So I would say that generally speaking, before entering into any career, I would say get out there and see the world a little bit. And that doesn't mean that you have to backpack across Eastern Europe or something like that, but if that's what you want to do, great. But just get to know something outside of your hometown or outside of the closest big city that you grew up near.